Hello, my name's Cool Asshole Justin. I go by a lot of different names. Some of them my wife calls me. So we're gonna have. I want to tell a story today, and I'm gonna begin by prefacing this with I'm kind of stealing the idea from Spoony, who was over at SpoonyExperiment.com, gave credit where credit's due, and Channel Awesome and all that stuff. He used to have a series that he did called Counter Monkey, wherein he told stories of his gaming career where he did stupid shit, where awesome shit happened, and just a few of his thoughts on it. He did a whole thing about dice that I actually enjoyed because he just collected so many dice over years, and admittedly, I've had probably the same one or two sets of dice that I've had for 20 years, probably more than likely more. I'm gonna say more. um, so I'm kind of stealing his idea, and I'm trying to record this in a different manner. I'm actually using the webcam that I got for my birthday back in August, and I want to see how this turns out when I upload it and see if it still looks good. Now, even though I'm looking at my face and it looks all right, it's what my 8 subscribers will probably tell me whether or not it's good. So, what I wanted to talk about was a real quick story about my first time role playing as a teenager, or getting in my teenage years, or somewhere around there. Maybe I was 12, maybe I was 11. I don't remember. 6th grade, maybe 7th. A long time ago. All that matters. And the guy who was running the game was this former army sergeant who was an adversarial GM. And he set us up with a vampire who was, I'm going to say he was going to be our new benefactor. And the reason why is he set this vampire up to kick our asses and just kind of leave us done. If you want to live, you'll do this for me and that for me. And you, holy paladin, you'll end up being corrupted by my chaotic evil, or whatever evil he is. So we sit down and we play this game. We come across a vampire. He says, I'll be back at the full moon to this village, and if you're still here, gods forbid, or something like that. It was actually a pretty good moment. It had this really creepy tinge to it, and I enjoyed it. I will be honest, I enjoyed the moments building up to this. However, this is where the game gets weird. We do a whole bunch of lore research on vampires because we have like 30 days. And silver chains and scattering his body parts to the 4 corners of the earth so that they can never rejoin, and this whole series of things that we're going to do to this vampire once we kill it. But what do you expect from a first level fighter, paladin, ranger, and I forget if we had a cleric. I just don't remember, to be honest. I think we did have a cleric, because I remember someone having turn undead. I remember misreading it, at least. I was playing the ranger. So we basically make a whole bunch of wooden stakes out of my arrows. And we hide. I get hidden from undead, or invisible undead. I don't remember what the spell was called. And so we're sitting there, we're waiting for him to show up, and he comes into the tavern. Oh, I see you're still here. Me being invisible, called shot to the heart. I rolled a natural 20. And with the vampire, staking is done. So, the GM gives me this look. And then he continues. Because what he did is he went from being just a dick GM, and he was a dick GM. I like the guy, but he was a dick. He pulls out the mother of all fuck yous. And what the mother of all fuck yous are is his hellhound charges me, even though I'm out of range, charges me and scorches my face, and I'm an elf pretty boy. And proceeds to kill us in the next encounter. We get attacked by kobolds. 100 of them. And we haven't had time to properly rest from the fight with the demon panther things that you have to after the way he played it, you have to roll a 5 or a 6 on a d6 to actually hit the real one because, oh my god, you can't hit the right one. And this is all still first level. Yeah, that was our game. And he went from being just a dick to being like a super adversarial GM, like on a die roll. Oh, he got lucky, so let me... I always like that story. It's a good story for introducing to you how I... One of the reasons I dislike D&D and most Pathfinder type games is a strong focus on fantasy. I like Vampire. I like the Masquerade. I like Werewolf the Apocalypse. I'm definitely an old... classic World of Darkness is what they're calling it now. And so the game I want to tell you about, and I was running this game. Now, in Werewolf the Apocalypse, the company Pentex, I don't remember how it forms exactly. And I mean, I could actually read up on it and look through it, and there's actually an entire book dedicated to Pentex as a company and how it formed. Didn't care. I hardly ever use real settings provided by the books to begin with. And a lot of that has to do with it throws off veteran players who are trying to metagame positive things out of the game. So we sit there, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? You know what? Company mergers were not that huge back in the 1800s, at least not to my memory. Therefore, this is something kind of new to the small town of Magnus. So, the people who, because where Magnus was, it was like a few hours away from Austin. And Austin is a burgeoning, or a growing, whatever you want to call it, metropolis at this point. Or city. And I was describing it as, hey, I don't know real history, so we're just going to go with whatever I say. So, Austin is a growing city, and as a growing city, you have a lot of towns that are around it that, if you can't get supplies in your small town, you go to the big city nearby as quickly as possible. So the idea is that Magnus is this small town out of the way, like in an old Western movie type of thing. So you have this dirt beaten tracks through town around the buildings, and then the further you get away from the town, it starts to lush up. Depending on where you're at in those cities and whether or not they're they're green or if it's a one-horse town, things like that. So I had this scenario set up where Pinnerton Oil and Texas Steel were going to merge together as a company. And the PCs were investigating why all of a sudden there's more Banes in the city. And not only that, there's a lot of greed, specifically greed going on. And that was one of those things that was really interesting when I was setting up the scenario, and I'm like, oh, I think I can work with this on a level. I think I got this. I got a good story going here. And I had some threads out there about the town sheriff goes missing. He was actually... and this was from day one, mind you. He was a ghoul to a Giovanni who was going out to all these small towns and just grave digging the living fuck out of these graves. And he was using necromancy and 2 different paths of necromancy to basically bind Banes onto a amalgamation of human skeletons. And this thing was like 20 foot tall, so even the tallest of the Garu we had couldn't just click it, pop it in the jaw real quick. It was a pretty cool scenario, and you basically either had to attack the core of its being, which was about right here, and I'm zoomed in really close because my room's dirty and I don't want y'all to see that. But right here in your sternum, it had a glowing pulse of bane matter that was both material and immaterial at the same time. Like I said, a neat scenario. But he wasn't the focus. Nor was the balefire breathing Black Spiral Dancer coming from Austin to see what he can do to rampage these small little towns either. Basically, a lot was going on in a short period of time. So we get this all set up, and we're beginning the scenario, and this story has one of the most frustrating players I've ever played with, because he wouldn't listen. So this is about the burning of Austin. Now, it is affectionately called the burning of Austin because, well, they burnt down half of Austin. So the way that it works, if you're not familiar with Werewolf, is you have a spiritual component to a building and you have a physical component to the building. Together they make a whole building. So if the spiritual side is weakened, sometimes you can just like push over walls because it has nothing of substance keeping it together. In the spirit world, you can still have a spirit building, but it doesn't always, the new buildings don't always hold up as well, because if the spirit building doesn't match the physical building doesn't have the spiritual structure to keep it sound. But those walls that overlap with the spiritual components, yes, those are good walls. So they sense the worm here, and the worm is the big bad malevolent evil in the series and throughout the entire game, and they know that the worm is here. They don't know how strong it is, but they say, the worm is here. Yeah, this might be a good idea to burn this place down to the ground. And they do just that. However, they just don't burn it down to the ground. They decide to go into the Umbra, the spirit world, and burn that to the ground. Now, this gets to my best friend's character, who was, as much as I love my friend, he always wants to make the doctor. We played a Changeling game. He was constantly working on the sonic screwdriver with his knocker. We played all of these different games, and he always played a character that could just get up and leave at the moment of the drop of a hat. Always. I love you, man, but you play the same character a whole lot. Or at least in my games. So, we sit here, and he found... So, in the 2nd edition player's book, it might not be in the player books, it might have been the... Sorry, I actually had it right over here. The player's handbook. Not the actual guide, but the player's handbook. There is a background called Newman. And what Newman is, it's a spirit that is attached to you. Your family, your great-great relatives did something great for some spirit, and you now have a permanent spirit ally. You can summon to it, you can speak to it without spirit speech. Really, really nifty thing. It's not a totem, but it's an ally. So, he decided on a tornado spirit. And he summoned it back the moments before this fire broke out. Now, normally, the fire wouldn't have spread. I'm thinking, yeah, you know what, reality here. The fire wouldn't have spread that much. Maybe a couple buildings over, the fire brigades, if that's what they were still called back then, would have gotten there in time to put out the fire without it spreading too far. No. No. I sat down for a moment. I'm like, I didn't have all this back then, not by the way either. That's fire spirit. That tornado spirit is a lot of wind. Yeah. So, these spiritual fires spread throughout the Umbra, burning tons of the city down. So, the rest of the city kind of burnt with it. Now, couple little side stories. That's how Austin burned down. That's not where the story continued on after that for a few more sessions, till some shit happened with some bad rolls, blah blah blah. I'm not gonna go into it. So they get back and they find that the Weaver spiders, which are the spirits that create all this that form matter in the spirit world, have laid railroad tracks all the way to this place I called a glen. Now, for me, it was a place where the spirit world and the material world overlapped. And in the Wild West, that sounded like something that'd be really cool to have there. These sparse places throughout the deserts and throughout the mountains where you literally walk into it and you don't know if you're in the Umbra or if you're in the physical world. Really neat idea, I think. Probably nowhere near original. Probably not the first person to think of it, and I'll be honest, I know I'm not. So, the spiders, if they had bothered to investigate them, were all worm tainted. Because they never bothered to scent the worm on the spiders. But the spiders, I had a Black Widow hourglass pattern on all of their bellies. They never bothered to check. So when this fire starts spreading, they lead it right to that glen. This glen where just like Gnosis is free. You have a giant wolf spider, not wolf spider, Jesus Christ, that'd be scary. You have a giant, well, they're never mind. Sorry, sidetrack. I had a celestial I called Mother Wolf who had her den there. When you showed up, you would see yellow eyes on this tree line in the middle of this glen where this really, really sweet water poured. It was glorious to see them get there, and the entire thing is burning with bale fire now because the spiders made bale fire on the way there. Because fuck it, if we're going to take this down, we're going to do it right now. So, the burning of Austin. That's that story. And the game was actually pretty good. The burning of Austin actually happened pretty early. And it put the pack in this really bad spot. Because most of the other packs and most of the other sets didn't want to fuck with them anymore. Not one little bit. And not because they were so dangerous, but you burned out a sacred place in your ignorance. No. So it was this really, really neat moment when this happened because the players were like, fuck. Now, I want to confess something here, since I'm talking about this story. It contains two moments that I both love and hate. First off is Fire Woo. Fucking Fire Woo. So the first time they show up to Austin, they're looking for information on Pinnerton Steel. And they show up, and the third goes, I'm going to ask some spirits some question. He walks up to a lamp, because they're looking for people as well, the people who come out to Magnus and drink. Talks to the spirit. Spirit, answer me this question. Or something like that. I forget how it was phrased. And he goes, Fire, woo! And the table breaks up in laughter. It was hilarious. It was one of these great moments that beginning out with this super serious way of bringing the pack together, and then you have this moment of pure comedic joy. The other great moment in this story was in my cousin, my cousin-in-law. That's the third. He ended up being the pack leader in the set, not the set leader, but the pack leader. And one of the people in the pack who was an NPC was this character who I gave a lot of, I have like 4 extra people in the pack. They weren't always with them, but they were part of the pack itself. So they were guilty of basically fucking another Garu, which is against the litany, which is against the rules, which is very bad. And bless him, and I don't bless him or whatever. He's sitting there and he starts admonishing, or however you pronounce that word. He just starts going into this NPC, and of course he's looking at me. Both everyone around the table has been in the military, and it just feels personal. I'm like, stop, dude, come, hold on, what? Time out for a second. This is feeling personal. It was such a great in-character moment because he had gotten me flustered that I was feeling personally attacked, which is what was happening to the character, to the NPC. It was wonderful. And now for my moment of guilty shame. Now, in this story, after the burning of Austin, they come across the Glen. Now, I have a pet NPC because he is no longer a playable character because he is way too fucking strong. He is an elder fucking 6th gen gangrel. He was one of the characters I played when I was younger, and I played in a game that we played on a fairly regular basis, and he had a lot of experience points behind him, and I mean a lot. We're talking celerity, potence, and fortitude 4 and above. All 3 of them. He had level 7 Protean. I think he was a bit of a badass. Now, they get up. Now, like I said, Rune is one of my greatest shames. I will never let the character die. I'll be honest. Right here, right now, I'll say it. I will never let him die. He has form of ghost. If he gets in too much shit, form of ghost out of there. Fuck you guys and trying to kill my pet NPC. But I don't use him that often. I normally use him to introduce a story. And basically as a vampire ally. They didn't see it that way, of course, but you know, it's how it works up here isn't how it always works out there. So they get up to him. They get up to the Glen, and the Glen is burning. And you've got Rune standing there, shirt off, and as he turns around, he just has blood tears all over his face and down his body. And he starts yelling at this pack of werewolves, these 4 werewolves. He just starts laying into them. And my cousin, my biological cousin, this guy is an idiot. When you tell him it's a bad idea to be a gunslinging werewolf because the gun may change size, but the bullet doesn't. The bullet will still fire, but the bullet doesn't become a cannon shot. He attacks Rune outright. Now, Rune has 6 in brawl, 7 in dex, 7 in strength. I forget if he has 6 in potence. The character sheet's over in the other room, and I don't feel like getting up and going and picking it. Now, whenever I don't want to kill player characters, I always do cinematic combat for certain things. So instead of what Rune really would have done, which was claw them to utter bits, he kicked them away. He was punishing them. No lethal, all bashing. That's all he did. Until my cousin's character gets up close, bites, and does damage. Now, a quick side note about Rune. 4 in fortitude, flesh of marble. I fucked up the roll. being honest. But normally, a one Garu bite is not enough to fucking throw damage on him. And he's like, fuck you. Pump, 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 pump. And he throws it in the water. Or he drops it or something like that. So, my shame about this game is not that I had a pet NPC kill a PC. But, well, that is a shame. I have to be honest. This is such a... The game was tremendous. It had a lot of ups and downs to it, but those were like big highlights of it. Now, here's the thing. I actually turned that around into a positive for them because they can now go on a spirit quest to find out what the Heart of Ferris does, because Rune leaves after just kind of beating them around for a few minutes. And Mother Wolf comes out. She's beaten. She's battered. Her earthly form is about to shimmer away. And she cries a tear onto Ferris's heart, and it turns to stone. I remembered his name. So, now they have the stone heart of Ferris. Or Ferris's stone heart. I have, again, notes with the character sheet, because I have this big old binder. I love that binder. So, the characters now have this binder, this stone heart, and basically what it does is if you pour polluted water, like it can't be worm-tainted water, but if you pour water into one of the ventricles, it will pump and it will purify the water. It's a purifier. But it's a fetish purifier, so they could have kept it on them and, you know what, pissed into it and had clean drinking water if they wanted to. But they get to the place where they're going, and I forgot where I sent them in the Umbra, because they went into the Deep Umbra. They went into the realms. And they found out what it did. And they found out that if they took the heart and placed it into that lake, the lake where that sweet water came from, it would purify the lake of all the taints, because that's essentially was its fetish purpose. It could do other stuff, but as long as it stayed in that lake, it would continue to clean the water, and at least in this area, it would not pollute. The water was nowhere near as good as it used to be, but now you still have clean drinking water for the town. It was a fun game, but I had to throw that out there because that was fucking my cousin. That guy just... I have another story. If this turns out well, I'm gonna post the other story too. But he never learned from his lessons. I'm not an adversarial GM or storyteller, whatever. I am more of a guy who you give me, you throw the, I give you a plot hook, you bite on the hook, and depending on what you do, depends on what happens. Another great moment. Oh, I gotta tell this part before I cut this video, and I know it's going a little long. One of the best parts about this game is I'm a very descriptive ST. So they're chasing down this Giovanni, and this Giovanni has a white picket fence house. Why? Because it is completely subversive because of where he's living. Because he's living out pretty much out on the outskirts of one of the cities. I think it was Austin or somewhere. Has this nice, beautiful home. It was somewhere in between Magnus and Austin. Not direct, but like up here. So they arrive, and I'm describing the house. The carriage looks like it was made up to go. No horses are attached. You see the barns open, and even from this distance, you can see that the horse has the bites and all the gear on it. I don't know what it's called. You can still smell the worm. It's tainted here, and it smells horrid. The house, the front door is open. Not fully open, but you know, it's cracked where light's leaking into the building. You know this is just after sunrise. And they're like, okay, we're going to storm into this place. We're going to start breaking windows. Because I also described that all the windows had thick curtains on them. And they go through and they start burning down this house. And my friend knows me so well. He knows if I give a description, it is not blind. If you want a description about something else in the room, yeah, sure, I'll give it to you. But if I describe something in a scene, even though his character wouldn't have known this, I still gave it to him because it was just a glorious moment of the relationship between the players and the storyteller. He's like, I toss a burning piece of wood into the carriage. Like, fuck you. Because I was actually going to have him escape. From the very start, when they arrived, the Giovanni was so, was absolutely sure he didn't have time to escape, so he didn't. What he did is he hopped into the trunk on his carriage. And it actually had a false bottom to it. So even if they popped it open, all they were going to see as they moved around the clothes would see a bottom. I'm like, fuck you, dude. You hear sudden screeches. You don't know what happened, but all of a sudden out of the trunk jumps this vampire. Seeing the sunlight in his full glory just turns to ash. I hate you right now. We're going to take a 5-minute break. And we got up, we took a break, we came back. They took around what was left of the house. And a lot of it was burnt. There's nothing good there anymore. That game. I tried to duplicate it, to be honest. That was my... I told you I had 2 things that made me really shameful about that game. I tried to duplicate it. Same setup, with a lot of the things remaining the same. However, went completely 180 on it. Completely. But that's the Burning of Austin, Fire Fire Woo, and the Jumping Giovanni. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope the video goes well because I'm going to be uploading it shortly before I start work, which is what that computer in the back is for. And so you guys have a good night, good day, good evening, whatever it happens to be for you.